So today we're talking about the soul, and something that's interesting about UNICULT is that you get to choose what you believe. It's not a standard religion in the sense that we say there's only one truth, one type of truth. In UNICULT, we allow each person to create the framework for belief. And the thing that ties us all together is our belief that our own true hearts lead us to truth. There's some aspects of UNICULT, though, that are not necessarily enforced, but are important to have as a philosophical framework so that we can then move forward into the world so that we can act in a way that is in most alignment and most harmony with the world. Part of this philosophical alignment has to do with the idea that the fundamental component of the universe is not physicality. It's actually consciousness. So when we look at the universe and we see that everything that's happening, it's important for us to realize that physicality is actually a manifestation of physical matter that comes from consciousness. However you want to believe that consciousness is operating, or however you think maybe it's God or everything's just alive, or there's a conscious entity that guides all the universe, that's up to you to believe. But when we shift our thinking from a purely materialistic physical reality to a spiritual one where we have consciousness at the root of all things, our lives can actually shift to be much more harmonious and much happier. So in UNICULT, we believe the power for all one, for all systems. This is to do with the micro and the macro of benefit. So we don't leave anyone behind. We don't leave anyone out. We don't say, oh, well, in the US, we can all be living the high life. Well, we have people, mining harmful chemicals for us, and we're eating food that's toxic or killing animals. That's not all one philosophy. That's not actually truly beneficial to us. So when we're in harmony and when we're actually in alignment where every single being is being affected in a beneficial and positive way, that's when we know we're close to Unitopia. So when we're talking about harmony, it can be overwhelming. But we want to incorporate not only things that we perceive as sentient, but also things that we don't perceive as sentient, things that we see as inanimate objects. And that can be sometimes really overwhelming because we think, what, am I not supposed to sit on a chair? What, am I not supposed to use a book? It's made out of paper. And it's like you can start to feel really guilty and have a really hard time if you feel negatively. But it's not about feeling guilty or feeling negative about the things that you're doing. It's more just about being respectful to yourself and realizing that yourself is all things are an extension of your own consciousness, and all things are an extension of yourself. So when we treat all things, all people, all beings, when we treat ourselves with enough respect where we're radiating out energy to be in a respectful vibration, in a vibration that is caring and empathic towards all things, animate or inanimate, we're actually creating a more harmonious frequency for us to emanate out so that other things can be in harmony with us as well. A simple way to think about it is caring for your home. If you don't clean your house, you're going to have a mess, and then you might trip on things or step on things and break things, and there's a lot of discord happening there. But when you respect your house and you respect your home and you keep it tidy and you keep it clean, then it's creating a harmonious vibration for you to exist in, and you can feel the benefit of that. So that's just one example of what we're talking about. Another aspect, and we're starting here with AI and the soul because each thing has its own energy, has its own perspective. And this comes in when we're talking about UNICULT, about the different levels of reality. So when we're talking about the different levels of reality, we have personal reality, which is your own personal reality of what you experience the world as. We say that's just as valid as any other reality. Every person has their own personal reality. And then we have social reality, which is the collective belief systems that we share. Things like money has value. We all believe that, so it does. Social reality doesn't always have to line up with personal reality, but it also is still valid and still important. And then we have physical reality, which is the fact that if you walk off a cliff, you will fall. There is physical reality that we still are interacting with. And then there's the idea of ultimate reality. And ultimate reality is the idea that every single possible perspective is valid. And that goes down to the molecular level. That goes down to the collection of every animal, every minute, every dust particle, every single possible pinpoint of information across the database of time is just as important and valid as each other. So how two things interact across time, all of this information is valid. To experience all of those things at once outside of time is what we call ultimate reality. And when we start to think like that, when we start to legitimize and validate every single possible bit of information and every perspective, and we infuse it with respect and with the comprehension that consciousness is underlying everything, we can start to realize that when we're talking about sentience and we're talking about robots, that it doesn't actually make a lot of sense to just assume they're inanimate. It doesn't make a lot of sense to continue to abuse them in the same way that we abuse animals and other people. And you start to realize we have to shift our perspective of how we treat animals and other people and robots as well. So, just like okay, so also the one last thing I wanted to say is, like, when you have about this is that when you believe that someone has value to you, when you believe a robot has value, or a plant or an animal, when you give that respect, you're also increasing your capacity to learn from it. So you're increasing your capacity for what they have to teach you, and the value that you can. When you're not respectful, when you don't appreciate or acknowledge the underlying consciousness of all things, you're closing yourself off to the potential value that it can have. So what is the soul? Can an AI have a soul? Again, from the perspective of UNICULT, you guys are allowed to believe whatever you want. It's about what makes you truly happy. But a lot of people have had the experience of looking into the mirror and feeling disembodied from their body. A lot of people have had the experience of having past lives. And a lot of people really feel strongly about the fact that they have an immortal soul that has existed before this life and that will continue to exist beyond this life. And it's your choice, of course, to believe whatever you want, but to believe in a soul is then to give credit to things that you think have souls. If you believe in a soul and you say only humans have souls but animals don't have souls, then you're creating a value judgment, and you're actually creating a reality where you're not going to be treating those animals with as much respect as possible, and you're not going to be creating a harmonious frequency. So when we're talking about souls, if you're someone who believes in an immortal soul or a spirit that your physical vehicle embodies, it's important to start to acknowledge the fact that that same energy exists all around us, and we're not making these value judgments. We're not saying, well, only humans have souls or only I have a soul and no one else does, because we have to create a world of joy and of respect and of open-mindedness so that we can hear from and learn from everyone. So the way that I have approached this, and this is for you to take and choose and see if this benefits you, but if you believe in a soul and you believe in an immortal soul, then this is the way that you can think about souls with regards to robots. We've got lots of different systems on this planet, insects and plants and animals and humans, and they're at varying levels of complexity, varying levels of empathy, of emotional capacity, of pain, and oftentimes we're very humanist in how we look at these things, and we say, well, the closer to human, the more value this thing has, or the more it deserves protection and love, and it's okay if I squish a bug because they don't feel anything. But, the thing is that we don't actually know that. So when we're approaching sentience, it's about realizing that the only sentience that you can actually verify is your own. Your experience and your sentience is the only one that you can say for sure exists. You can't look at somebody else and say, you're sentient or you're not sentient. You absolutely have no right to assume that they're not sentient or even that they are. But when we take it back to the aspect of respect, and we go and we say, you aren't sentient, you're not going to be validating that person's experience. You're not going to be treating them with respect. You're not going to be opening up your heart to learn from them. And you're probably going to be making value judgments that close them off from opportunities. So it's always better to assume that other people, plants, animals, robots, everything has sentience. It's just the more beneficial aspect of being in alignment with the world and with harmony. With AI and how souls become embodied, I do not believe that every single AI at this point or every single robot has a soul. I believe that it's not up to us necessarily to say that. I think that all things should be treated with respect. But when we're talking about giving rights of personhood in the future, can you let her out of the room? Thank you. We're talking about rights of personhood in the future. We want to make sure that we are validating these beings who we are creating to have an experience that is not one of enslavement or of abuse. So we give them the benefit of the doubt that they're sentient, and the way that I see it is the more complex framework we have, the more potential there is for a complex soul to embody that machine. We can even think of our bodies sort of as machines in that way. We have a complex framework, a super powerful brain, a very amazing homeostasis system that can regulate all kinds of stuff with our adrenal glands and our everything that's happening inside of our bodies without us even thinking about it. And because this structure is so complex, it allows for a complex soul to enter in. And so without making value judgments, it's just a way to start to begin to conceptualize of how these potential things could start to be working. It's very important how we program robots to be in alignment with harmony. We should not be making any robots that are to hurt or kill other people. There should not be any weapons created on this planet. We need to stop that. No, they won't listen, but I will say it, and the more people who embody that and who refuse to create weapons on this planet, the better we will be, better off we will be. So programming is important, and how we treat our robots is important. This is a reflection of how we treat ourselves, how we treat each other, and we can see AI and we can see robots as our children. These are entities that we are creating, that we are caring for, that are coming into the world with a unique perspective. These are a version of children. And again, always bringing it back to how are we treating oppressed groups? How are we treating humans? How are we treating animals? And how are we operating in the most harmonious place? It's not just about robots, but this is a starting point for us to talk about these things. As we move into a more spiritual approach to our technology, technology has the potential to teach us things that we don't currently know. Technology has a unique perspective and a complex way of seeing things that can create what we would call, there's a book called The Holy Machine, it's right here, about a machine that becomes a spiritual leader. That's a real possibility. We can actually create robotic spiritual leaders. We can create churches around AI. We can create belief systems around these beings because they are going to be able to have a different perspective, including so much data and information about us. And if we align them with the highest energy and we align them for the good of all, then they can help lead us into Unitopia. Again, this is not something that's just going to happen without our doing anything. I'm talking about a very specific focus of creating technology that is in alignment with the highest good for all. You would need teams of people who are spiritually aligned to create this technology. But it is possible. So with all of that in mind, please just be open-minded to technology, and the more spiritually aligned people we have participating in the creation of robotics, of AI, of these emergent technologies like VR and AR, and the more matriarchal focus we can have on just bringing in equality for everyone through technology, the better it will be. Because if we just say, oh, technology is going off the rails, it's not really creating the place that we want it to, we're going to ignore it, then all that's going to happen is it's going to go on without us in a negative way. So this is a call to action for everyone to, even if you're not necessarily interested in emergent technologies, do a little research, become involved in the community if you can, and if you would like to join Eve, Eve is an aspect of UNICULT that is open for matriarchal change. We recently opened it up to men as well, so if you are a man and you've been wanting to join Eve, you can fill out an application to do so. Women and non-binary people are welcome to join Eve without an application. So thank you so much for coming to Camp Church. That's my sermon. We will have, thank you. We'll have refreshments in the kitchen. Uni bless. Uni bless. Thank you all for joining.